Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In the race for the White House, Tuesday was a big night for the underdogs as Democrat Bernie Sanders and Republican Ted Cruz secured decisive victories in the Wisconsin primary. Sanders beat rival Hillary Clinton by winning over 56% of the vote. Ted Cruz easily defeated frontrunner Donald Trump by 13 percentage points. Sanders spoke during a rally Tuesday night in Wyoming, which holds its Democratic caucus on Saturday.
With our victory tonight in Wisconsin, we have now won 7 out of 8 of the last caucuses and primaries. And we have won almost all of them with overwhelming landslide numbers.
Senator Ted Cruz celebrated his victory during a rally in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And as a result of tonight, as a result of the people of Wisconsin defying the media, defying the pundits, I am more and more convinced that our campaign is going to earn the 1,237 delegates needed to win the Republican nomination.
We'll have more on the Wisconsin results after headlines. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has said he would force Mexico to pay for a border wall by threatening to block immigrants living and working in the United States from sending money to their families back in Mexico. That is, unless the Mexican government makes a one-time payment of $5 to $10 billion for the wall. Trump says he could cut off the flow of money, known as remittances, by changing a rule under the U.S. Patriot Act. Experts disagree that Trump would have the legal authority to block remittances in this manner. Experts have also cast doubt on the overall feasibility of Trump's border wall. In Mexico, the idea of blocking remittances was met with widespread ridicule and opposition, including from Senator Padierna Luna.
These remittances are private. They are the migrants' property. There is no authority to decommission them or to take them. It's theft. He will be stealing, which is something no one can accept.
Iceland's Prime Minister has resigned, becoming the first major casualty of the Panama Papers revelations. Leaked documents from the Panama-based law firm Mossack Fonseca revealed that the Prime Minister, Sigmundur David Gunnlaugsson, owned an offshore company with his wife, which he failed to declare when he entered Parliament. He's accused of concealing millions of dollars worth of family assets. Gunnlaugsson's resignation followed the largest public demonstrations in Iceland's history. We'll go to Reykjavik for more on Iceland later in the broadcast. Meanwhile, President Obama's spoken out about the Panama Papers while urging Congress to close tax loopholes known as inversions, in which U.S. corporations agree to be bought by foreign companies simply to avoid paying U.S. taxes. The Treasury Department has unveiled new regulations to try to limit this process. On Tuesday, Obama said that many in the United States were taking advantage of legal loopholes to avoid U.S. taxes.
We've had another reminder in this big dump of data coming out of Panama that tax avoidance is a big global problem. It's not unique to other countries because, frankly, there are folks here in America who are taking advantage of the same stuff. A lot of it's legal, but that's exactly the problem. It's not that they're breaking the laws, it's that the laws are so poorly designed that they allow people, if they've got enough lawyers and enough accountants, to wiggle out of responsibilities that ordinary citizens are having to abide by.
Also on Tuesday, pharmaceutical giant Pfizer reportedly decided to abandon plans to merge with the Ireland-based drug maker Allergen following the unveiling of the Treasury Department's new rules. The deal would have allowed Pfizer to avoid billions in U.S. taxes and would have been one of the largest corporate inversions in U.S. history. This comes as the Panama Papers have revealed at least 200 U.S. citizens who use the Panama-based law firm Mossack Fonseca, the world's fourth largest offshore law firm. The list includes Robert Miracle of Bellevue, Washington, who's serving a 13-year sentence for a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme based on investments in Indonesian oil fields, and Benjamin Way, head of the private equity firm New York Global Group. Way was indicted last year on securities fraud. Since the beginning of the publication of the Panama Panama Papers on Sunday. Many have questioned why more U.S. citizens and companies have not been named in the articles analyzing more than 11.5 million secret files. You can go to democracynow.org to see our full discussion about the Panama Papers yesterday. In Europe, refugees continue to stage protests to demand countries reopen their borders. On Tuesday, a group of refugees set up an encampment along the major highway E75 near the Greece Macedonia border, blocking traffic for hours. This comes as the United Nations Refugee Agency is raising new questions about whether Greece is deporting refugees back to Turkey before they've had a chance to apply for asylum. Under the controversial European Union plan, Greece is supposed to process all refugees' asylum claims and only deport people if their claims are rejected. But the UN says Greek police did not process the claims of at least 13 of the 202 refugees deported to Turkey Monday, the first day the deal was put into practice. Meanwhile, the United States has deported 85 refugees from Bangladesh, India, and Nepal who were seeking asylum after fleeing repression and violence in their home countries. On Sunday, immigration advocates say they received a call from one of the men before the mass deportation who said, quote, "My family's already been visited by the police in India where they abuse my family and threaten what they will teach me a lesson when I am returned," unquote. After the deportation, Bernie Sanders issued a statement saying, quote, "Deportation can be a death sentence to detain minors, parents, and asylum seekers," end quote. Some of the men deported from Corrections Corporations of America's Florence Correctional Center in Arizona Sunday night had participated in a series of hunger strikes last year to demand their release from the for-profit detention centers. The Puerto Rican Senate and the House of Representatives have both passed an emergency declaration authorizing the governor to suspend payments on $72 billion in public debt, setting up a dramatic showdown between Puerto Rico and hedge funds amidst the island's historic debt crisis. The bill authorizes the Puerto Rican governor to, quote, "protect the health, security, and public welfare by using government funds first and foremost for public services," end quote. The dramatic move comes one day after a group of hedge funds sued to freeze the assets of Puerto Rico's Government Development Bank in efforts to stop the bank from spending money on the island that the hedge funds want to go toward upcoming debt payments. We'll have more on Puerto Rico later in the broadcast. In Bahrain, protests broke out after the funeral of a teenager reportedly killed by police who were trying to arrest him for participating in protests. 17-year-old Ali Abdulghani died Monday in the hospital 4 days after officers raided his family's house. He was later found lying in the street, bleeding from a head injury after a police chase. Witnesses said he was hit by a police vehicle. On Tuesday, funeral goers blocked a road as police threw tear gas at the crowd in the town of Sharakan. Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant has signed a sweeping anti-LGBT law, which will allow organizations and businesses to deny people an array of services based on religious objections. Opponents say the new law, set to take effect in July, will legalize discrimination against LGBT people. American Civil Liberties Union of Mississippi head Jennifer Riley Collins said, quote, "This is a sad day for the state of Mississippi and for the thousands of Mississippians who can now be turned away from businesses, refused marriage licenses, or denied housing, essential services, and needed care based on who they are," end quote. On Tuesday, Chad Griffin of the Human Rights Campaign compared Mississippi's law to the anti-LGBT law recently passed in North Carolina.
Mississippi needs only to look as far as North Carolina to see how damaging discrimination can be to a state's reputation and to a state's economy.
After the Madison. This comes as PayPal has said it's abandoning plans to expand into North Carolina following the recent passage of HB 2, known as the Bathroom Bill, which bars North Carolina cities and towns from passing laws prohibiting discrimination against LGBT people in public accommodations. PayPal's president, Dan Schulman, said, quote, "Becoming an employer in North Carolina where members of our teams will not have equal rights under the law is simply untenable," unquote. More than 100 writers, including Pulitzer Prize winners Junot Diaz and Alice Walker, have called on the PEN American Center to reject sponsorship from the Israeli embassy for PEN's upcoming week-long World Voices Festival in New York City. The call is part of the cultural boycott campaign against Israel, part of the global boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. Alice Walker said, quote, "As a PEN member, I want this organization that is supposed to be a champion of writers' rights to stand up for Palestinian and writers, academics, and students who are suffering under a repressive Israeli regime that denies their right to freedom of expression, she said. The global messenger application WhatsApp has added end-to-end encryption for its more than 1 billion users. This comes a week after the FBI abandoned a high-profile legal battle against Apple over the iPhone's encryption after saying the agency was able to crack the iPhone without Apple's help. And San Francisco has become the first U.S. city to approve 6 weeks of fully paid parental leave. The new law, passed unanimously on Tuesday, applies to all new parents, including same-sex couples and adoptive parents. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.